Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 630.
WMAL.
Good morning. Get the Rolling Stones underneath us here. It's 8:37, and you're listening to the Morning Majority on WMAL. It's Wilson and Neiman in the house. Mary Catherine Ham taking the day off. We assume she'll be back tomorrow. And we are joined on the phone by Larry Kudlow. Larry, boy, we need somebody who's going to tell us the straight truth right now. All of Washington is sort of following that old saying that when in trouble or in doubt, run in circles, scream and shout. A lot of screaming, a lot of running in circles, a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth right now about this debt limit deal. How do you see this thing playing out?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not going to forecast it. All I'll say is...
No, I'm expecting a forecast from you. Come on, you how do you see it? Is there going to be a compromise?
Yeah, there'll be a compromise, but I want to note there are two issues here. They're related, but there are two issues. One is raising the debt ceiling so we can meet our obligations in August. Mm-hmm. The second one, however, is some kind of spending and deficit package which will prevent a downgrade from the S&P Moody's rating agencies. That second one is almost as important as the first one. It's not quite as important, but it's almost as important, and they go together. And I think a lot of members of Congress have not considered that, or maybe they have, and I'm not giving them enough credit. But in the people we had on the program last night, for example, I think they did recognize that. You're going to have to do two things here. One is raise the ceiling, and two is prevent a downgrade.
All right, we had Senator Jim DeMint on, who I think would be one of the Tea Party hardliners in the Senate, and he has a lot of support with him. And he said he doesn't see a deal being reached until after the deadline hits. If that's the case, I mean, what concerns you the most if we go past the deadline?
Well, I mean, you don't want to try that. You just don't want to try that. Because, look, everybody is aware now of these new numbers out from this chap, Jay Powell, who was Papa Bush's guy. This is the policy.org, bipartisan.org.
Right.
We don't have enough cash flow to meet our obligations in August. We do not. And if we cover interest on the debt, as some people are saying, which we can, we're still going to have to wind up not meeting obligations for almost half the budget in August. Almost half the budget. And some of my conservative friends have to keep that in mind. The idea that you can allocate revenues to meet Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and interest is true, but only part of the story. There's, the FBI would shut down. People in the field in the military wouldn't get paid. Some very severe consequences. So that is no longer an option in my view. No longer an option. It has to be taken off the table and, realistic.
I hear what you're saying, and Senator DeMint and others, their point is there's a day of reckoning coming. We might as well do it now instead of waiting, months or years when it could actually be worse.
Well, look, Senator DeMint is a friend, and I have the greatest respect for him. I'm saying that we need to buckle in here and fix this thing. We need to come up with a $4 trillion deal. $4 trillion, really, because that's the number that S&P and Moody's is talking about. And that's a serious number. Look, they'll take us from AAA to AA, even if we pay the interest on the debt. That's my point is a simple one. That is not the only issue. The interest on the debt can and will be paid. I have no doubt about that.
So do we risk making the situation, our debt, worse if we don't raise the debt ceiling?
Yes.
Yeah.
We will devalue it.
And
yes, we will default on it.
And that's the one thing that I can't...
And we do not want to try that silly experiment. We do not. I mean, I can't say that strongly. And I don't even know what the consequences are. In other words, I'm not going to tell you interest rates are going to do this and the economy is doing that. The economy already is terrible. It may be on the verge of a double-dip recession for all we know. I mean, the numbers coming in are just awful. So let's say Goldman Sachs downgraded its forecast big time. I don't know what they know, but my point is we don't need to mess with this. What we need to do is hammer out something. And in my column, by the way, I had a simple thing. You've got a lot of spending cuts on the table here. You've got a lot of spending cuts, including President Obama's spending cuts, okay? They're there. They're on the table. You've got this cut, cap, and balance, okay? I don't know about the balance part, but cut and cap is a great idea. Now, let's make a deal, and on revenues, let's make it revenue neutral and let's put in the repatriation of foreign profits of American companies, which would put, $1 trillion or more into the U.S. economy. That will gain revenues. If you have some little silly deductions right now, what we want is broad-based business tax reform, 15% rate, and end all the deductions. But in the meantime, as a down payment, you could do that kind of thing. Repatriate the profits, that's pro-growth. Have some little deductions to satisfy the political requirement, and let's get on with it. Let's pass this hurdle. And then I thought Senator McConnell's idea was a very good one. Let's have this new committee, and let's let the committee report, like the base closings at the end of the year, and we'll have a big up and down vote on entitlement package. That probably works too. But in the meantime, I do not want to tempt a default, and I do not want to tempt a downgrade. I think they're both extremely important. The conversation's a bit stale.
Yeah.
The idea that we can get through this, the day of reckoning, no, we don't.
All right.
We can't tempt fate.
I hear what you're saying, and I understand it, and I know you feel very similar to how Jim DeMint feels, that we need to do something drastic. But
yes, the budget term. Look, the cut, cap, and balance is the Ryan budget. That's a $110 billion spending cut in 2012.
Well, it's even more
exactly what we need to be doing.
It's even more than the Ryan budget. The one thing I don't understand is, Republicans who voted for that Ryan plan essentially were voting to raise the debt ceiling, because you can't go through with the Ryan budget without raising the debt ceiling.
That is true.
So here's my question.
Why is that such a big deal?
I know that's what my question is. So are they being unreasonable? Is Jim DeMint and other Tea Party-like politicians that were voted in, are they being unreasonable here?
No, they're representing a super important point of view that we are spending and borrowing too much. And it's a philosophical political point. What we're asking here is a debate on the size and scope of government. And are we going to go into a European-style government with 25, 30, 35, 40% of spending? Or are we going to stay with an American free market government of 20% spending? Do we want to grow in the next 10, 20 years and have keep a prosperous America with an entrepreneurial culture? Or do we want a government-run planned economy? These are the issues. They're huge issues. And Jim DeMint is exactly right about all that. I'm just saying right now, it's almost a technical point. We must raise the debt ceiling, and we must produce enough to avoid a downgrade by the rating agency.
Very quickly, another topic I want to ask you about. We had a tremendous response here in this broadcast to some comments made by Steve Wynn about President Obama, saying that he's a wet blanket on the economy, on job growth, and this guy went on about a 4-minute rant in which he said basically he has created a culture of fear in the business world, and there's a lot of money sitting on the sideline that's not being invested because people don't really have a lot of confidence in his policies. Well, have you heard these comments, and what do you think about them?
Similar things on CNBC, and I think he's basically right. You have to ask yourself why, let's say, American business has $2 trillion in cash sitting on the sidelines, and they're not investing it, and they're not spending it. Why is this? We've never seen this before, and we're not getting the kind of job creation 2 years into a recovery. Why is this? And I think there are too many obstacles to growth, and I do think one of the obstacles is the president's own attitude toward business. But look, you have very concrete regulatory and tax hike threats, very concrete. EPA and energy, Dodd-Frank and bank loans, this whole National Labor Relations Board business, which is an assault on business, with Boeing. And you also have, in the 2013 budget, marginal tax rates go up. You have the Obamacare payroll tax goes up. The payroll tax is applied to investment, and on and on and on. So they're very specific threats. And a business doesn't hire for 6 months. A business makes a hiring decision for 3 to 5 years, and they have to assess the cost.
You got to have some knowledge about what's going to happen. Larry, I hate to cut you off, but we're way over on time. But thank you so much for joining us here on The Morning Joe. It's always a pleasure.